In fact, let me restart. So going through and adding something supernatural. Fiction needs at least somewhat a basis in something that's already happened, something we've observed, because then we can imagine it existing otherwise. Truth never needs that. There's a very famous quote by Mark Twain about truth in fiction, and that fiction actually needs nonfiction to exist, but truth does not, or nonfiction does not, because things can happen we have no concept about. So when I was sitting down and thinking about tonight's workshop, I wanted to put in something kind of special like that, where maybe there's a basin, maybe there's a forest, it could be even in a mountain. Something. Miller says there's a waterfall in Ireland that if the winds are correct, it falls up. Rip Artist says the skin bags we use and all skin are left behind as the water is pulled from our bodies, since only water is affected. So yes. Alright, so imagine this, right? I was thinking there's something like a basin. Maybe there once was water here, or something has happened, right? And of course, you have a river that would be flowing into where this lake used to be. There's something supernatural that happened, such as the water in this area. It would almost be like a mini desert, but the oasis is 200 feet up in the air. As the river actually starts floating up into a big ball that is a lake. It's just this sort of like bloopy, bloppy, globular lake. And if you're telling a story as a DM... Oh, by the way, Travesty, thank you very much. And Grimly18, hello and thank you for the first time chat. So we have here only water. Only water gets borne up or, is close to whatever the core of this magic phenomena is. So here is the exception to the rule. We just got done talking about natural forces. Well, you know what? Natural forces are nice and all, but we're familiar with those in our world. In a fantasy world, there's probably something that, could be or should be outstanding. And again, I was plotting and planning. I was thinking about some interesting things that we can do, because we want to build the norm and then we want to provide an exception to it. Because even throwing one thing into question can provide enough of an unstable, I guess I can't trust everything I know about this world here, and it provides a little bit of leverage, a little bit of intrigue to keep people wanting to read. So imagine this. What if whatever this force is only attracts pure water? Pure H2O. Not even Gatorade, okay? So the river actually flows up, and you get these quite literal streams going up into it. And water, in a sense, may want to drip down, but whenever it detaches, it just sort of like bloops back up. And so down here, we actually have a very dry desert, since all the moisture in the area, in the sky and in the soil. So really, the area of effect of this thing is down into the crater. We're implying that much, okay? Manshita says, there's a place not far from me, known as Electric Bray, where a freewheeling vehicle will appear to be drawn uphill by some mysterious attraction. Is that sort of like a haunted bridge or something, where you go there, beep twice, and like a ghost car is supposed to pass by you or something? But does Waterboy get to go too? Well, you know what? If he has the water... And maybe in the story, that's actually what you need to explore the mystery. You almost have to keep water around you to be drawn up into it. Because think of all the silt and minerals. Remember, water normally is hitting mountains and bringing all of the minerals down with it through erosion. Gems and metals and just, dissolved bits of things. If not, I don't know, ice breaks a rock and the rock flows and tumbles down through the river in time, etc., etc. Can you imagine the treasures? Can you imagine the gold? Even the possessions of people who got too close and dried out because the water was sucked from their bodies. And so you have this great baleful thing, which is in itself kind of ironic because water is a source of life. But down here in this desert basin would be innumerable valuables, minerals and gems and gold and trinkets and treasures of people who found this phenomena. I hate it too, GMV. That's why you always gotta moisturize. Think of the attraction this would be. Because if the water, either dripped down or there's just enough dust and everything, you would almost have stalagmites of precious minerals or of just things and skeletons and pieces of history from everything that was extracted from the water and just fell down, because only water is held in this area. And I also got to thinking, while we are writing a Dungeons and Dragons style fantasy novel, we're definitely using the D&D books for the inspiration for our villain, the inspiration for our main character, and we're going to reference those books over and over again. It is nice to mix up the formula, at least somewhat. Even in a D&D setting, why else do we homebrew? Why else do we go in my world? And we push our glasses up. And if you don't have glasses, I guess you could push your contacts up or whatever if you have them, but that looks kind of weird. Probably makes people uncomfortable, so pretend to push up your glasses instead. In my world. We have exceptions. And I thought, what would be interesting? Now, we don't have dwarven characters in the story that we know of so far. Our villain is human, and our hero is a half-orc. Or if we want to consider full orc, we have inspiration one way or the other. And, of course, we can develop what does human culture mean in this world. Those are excellent things to think about. Orcs in Eberron are not the same as orcs in the Forgotten Realms. Or not saying that one is better than the other, but they are different. And so I got to thinking, if everything was the same, but what about dwarves? Because I was thinking of mountains and water systems and all that. What if we have dwarves that might actually have a way, if only temporarily, almost like, how in Dune they have the suits that keep, even like your the moisture of your breath in. What if the dwarves of the setting have a way of retaining their water? A special suit, a special magic, something along those lines. Yes. Yeah, thank you, DQ. And there are traditional elements of dwarves we can preserve, because maybe they actually use this phenomenon, if they're not responsible for it. They use it to actually effectively pan the river for precious metals. But they have a way to counter it, or at least resist it for long enough. And then I got to thinking, you know what? What if we have a dwarven society that instead of favoring, we drink beer a bunch. If they are around water so much, what if the dwarves of our world are actually more, not aquatic, maybe in the way that they breathe water, but they favor it. They live around it. They probably follow underground rivers for the sources of their water to provide them mechanical power to continue to mine and do a lot of work, even above ground. So what if they're masters of watery things? And I had a fun little thought where instead of just, I'm a dwarf and I diggy hole and we drink beer and that's all we drink is beer and beer. What if the dwarves of this setting are actually water snobs? Because they have such refined palates from being around all kinds of water, glacial, underground, whatever this magic water is, etc. They can drink water and tell you the mineral content. Or they will have a favorite blend. Or they will actually put a little bit of a metal in their water for just the right seasoning and tang. And so we actually have dwarves that are water snobs instead. We still have a similar concept, but. And we can present them the idea, if we make one simple change to a familiar concept, it drastically changes a lot of other things as we have a ripple effect throughout the world. Because when you're writing something, you do want to play to the familiarity that people have with something, because it provides a lot of indirect world building and storytelling for you. Then if you just provide the one difference that ends up being kind of crucial, your reader only has to worry about the one difference, but take that one difference into consideration with everything else in that world. Miller says, I'll admit I'm a bit of a water snob. I honestly prefer well water over any other. Now, do you prefer, here's something, do you prefer well water with a little bit of a sulfur taste to it as well? Yeah, the Perrier clan of dwarves, GMV. But can you imagine that? Like, oh yeah, I like spicy water. I absolutely. My water, sulfur. Won't drink water without some sulfur in it. But in this case, you have the dwarves that are traditionally more land-bound, underground. They love beer and, and all this. And now we have dwarves which kind of are land-ground, but they're really the masters not of rock, but they're masters of water. Their refined palate can provide clues, similar to stone cunning, because they can taste the water and tell you, oh, it's water from this sea. In fact, the water's from this sea in the fall. I can tell because there's some tannins from the forest over the main river that dumps into the sea, and all the leaves fall in the river and it kind of ferments a little bit. I've had that before. A slight but not much is normal to me. It all comes from Ogallala aquifer around here. Add some salt to Rip Artist. That's what I do to drink it. I'm not a fan of sulfur. Fart water, says Mancheetah. Fire water that is actually flammable. Yeah, so that fire water could actually have a natural gas. It runs through an area of land that's very rife with natural gas and methane and such. It might actually be infused. And then you get like a Cuyahoga River style situation, which if any of you don't know, back a while ago, not like a while as in 2 months, but the river that runs through Cleveland, Ohio caught on fire because the city wasn't so astute in their care of the Cuyahoga River. Rip Artist says, I don't like the taste or non-taste of water at all. Oh, well then there you go, Miller. I'm glad I got it for you. Thing about water, after 2 or 3 days, it'll go off in taste. So yeah, and so we have, so can you now imagine a bunch of water snob dwarves? It's a fun idea. It's not completely over the top or nonsensical or to the point where your reader goes, you're really just trying to be different and flaunting it. Instead, it's a cool idea that you can develop, have fun with. It's different enough to get eye-catching, but it's not like you're being a try-hard about it. Right? So use these moments that you have. In a magical world, this happens. Maybe this could be part of the story, or we save it for another one, because it was clear that we're writing a young adult novel. And it's going to follow the adventures of our young adult heroine as she grows up and matures and goes through, everything that we go through in life. So this could just be something in the background that's referenced, and eventually the story could be here. But we always can keep this on the horizon wherever we want to put that water ball. Somewhere on the interior here. Could be, maybe that's what this place is. Because of all the water runoff, there's some sort of like a conflux of energy or something that could end up being just up here. Who knows? We could place it wherever we want. As long as eventually we can address elements of how it came to be and how it's sustained, don't sweat the details. Because it's already a mystery to your readers, because we don't have giant floating balls of water. I hope not, anyway. If you do, I don't know. Just call the news about it, I guess. So it's already going to grab our attention. And we're still approaching this giant floating ball of water with a sense of mystery, because our protagonist isn't really going to know much about it either. Either because she's young, even if she grows up by it, or maybe she's heard a tale, but it's always just that thing on the horizon that we can get to. But we gotta have patience. And we can also develop the rest of the world around us. Oh, maybe that's a spot between countries? Oh. So way over here? Oh, and you know what? Kragar, that's on the edge of the desert too, isn't it? We might be able to play with that. I'll put the I'll put mystery ball ? Over here. And welcome home to you, Raven. So this actually is a no man's land, because neither country can get close to this floating globular lake without people succumbing to it. So even the water there isn't really accessible, and it pulls up the rivers that are kind of the border. I think that makes sense. And when we get to the other details of this place, or we start making some settlements, one of Raven's favorite roles to make with a workshop role is the weird locale. There is a chart in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and if you don't have one, I suggest you go to your friendly local game store and pick one up. It is a chart of weird locales. It's by the settlement section in the DMG. And it has a lot of fun little strange, more fantasy-style landmarks that you can intersperse throughout your lands. Coffee Cat was talking about it earlier in going through the settlement creation process and sprinkling in different features, mundane or mystical alike, over the current setting of the Rebirth D&D story. And something like the water ball is not an idea on the D20 chart, though it's certainly in the spirit of it. And it's fine to include your own custom ideas, or you take an idea that's on the chart and you step to the side with it. You observe the inspiration, but you swap up some details. And we're going to be going through the, we'll make the capital and we'll do all that in a separate workshop, because tonight we're talking about rolling beans and rolling rice, and we're talking about the basics, how weather, geography, and geology work. We can discuss topography in this second part, I guess, of the workshop as we extended things from our idea of the mundane going into the magical, and just considering in a world where stuff like this exists, if you want to have dwarves, how samey or different are your dwarves from how they are normally presented in the player's handbook or some other historical or folklore source that your dwarves are coming from, or even dwarves that are attached to a real life, to some real life concept, because maybe you're familiar with a particular trade and the dwarves of your world are the primary people of that trade, so you can identify cultural tags and such through your dwarves more readily that way. Coffee Cat says the current political climate of all of Argyll was randomly rolled. How the prince died and the two particularly powerful lords are looking to become the next king in the prince's place. Yes, Coffee Cat is hitting some political intrigue in the Rebirth tale. And if you would like to watch, make sure that you follow Coffee Cat and tune in Thursday nights around 8:30 Eastern. And if you want to watch Vampire the Masquerade, Austin by Starlight, you tune in Wednesday nights around 11 o'clock. Well, 11 my time, Coffee Cat. So think about this. Think about the things that we encounter in nature. Sierra Echo, I mean, it's the meme phrase, magnets, how do they work? How do magnets work in your world? If you are writing a fictional piece, magnets may not be the same, or not all magnets are the same. Or something that we as present-day humanity hasn't gone through. The poles of our planet swap, where north becomes south. I don't know if there's a lot of maybe there's conjecture as to what happens, but at some point in time, the core of the magnetic core of the Earth flips, and it's happened before. As well, our current understanding of science, disclaimer, I guess, shows it in various not like fossil records, but through like core samples and whatnot, where the polarity of the Earth has flip-flopped. I don't know how much sci-fi or real-life conjecture happens if we might actually have planes fall out of the sky, if all of a sudden one day the core of the Earth just massively shifts and bloop and flips. You know, Mother Earth goes, "Oh, my baby dropped." You know, that could be something that is an amazing, compelling part, a backdrop here. What would happen if this world actually uses compasses for navigation, but either the BBEG or just natural forces, have magnetism. Not really magic, but natural magnetism is starting to be unreliable. Or, in the case of this, what if there's little pockets of gravity that are disobeying? Now that you could run that as wild magic, or just similarly, it is just a direct spell effect as per the, as per the spell. Only on a wider scale, such that we have this manifestation of, water, and an entire lake is just anti-gravity. And the anti-gravity is selective to water only. For whatever reason. Or it's a magic curse, or, BBG's behind it, etc., etc. Take the natural concepts that we have and use them. Is there somewhere here that we're going to get a Yellowstone super volcano explosion? Maybe if we want there to be a fault line somewhere, or it's the volcano here that has always been threatening it, but at this point everyone's just written it off that it's all rumble and no actual lava. What if that becomes something major? Now, these lands may not have to worry as much about it because the wind is blowing from the west to the east. But a lot of stuff here can happen, or the ash reaches this point and starts absolutely polluting the water that runs back, so it pollutes the veins of the rest of this country if that super volcano were to go off. Demon Quiller says, one game has the heavy creation theme to it. The world is only a few thousand years old, given that there's no fossil fuel since biomatter didn't have time to decay. Just food for thought? Yeah. In a world, there's no coal or oil because the life upon it hasn't had millions of years to grow, die, and like compact itself down. That may very well be too. The concept of what is coal. I mean, beyond maybe inventing charcoal, but inhabitants of a new world like that, they burn tallow or other animal fats. Is there a replacement fantasy resource for that? And welcome Team Epic Productions. Thank you for coming in strong with your raid of 8, Team Epic. Now every time you come to the Hero Zone, I'm going to ask you what was going on in your D&D game. So come on, cough it up. Spaz Manaz. Alright, this may take a minute. Okay, there you go. Spaz. Just sit back. If you gotta crack your knuckles, although some people consider that to be a bad habit, but relax, stretch, do what you gotta do, and I would love to hear what happened this week. So take these odd little natural phenomena. How about the Centralia coal mine fires? Are any of you familiar with the Centralia coal mine fires? I think there's also something kind of like it, except with natural gas in Turkey? There's some place that's a pit that actually just has so much natural gas seeping up through it that it's just been burning for a very long time. And there's not really a way to put it out. Yep, the Pennsylvania coal mine fires. Yep, so that's what I'm talking about. You want a real-life Silent Hill? Go check out Centralia, Pennsylvania. Yeah, that's it. The Gates of Hell, Demon Quiller. Check out stuff like that that actually exists in our world because there's nothing saying that it can't happen here. In fact, if we have an entire plain of nice fresh water caught by the mountains that are flowing back out this way, maybe there was enough like natural composting. There could be a ton of peat, if not coal, here, or oil somewhere that could be relevant or could not be relevant to the people who live here. You know, to people who live in a very peat-rich area, that keeps them going. People need the people who live there need peat to live. And I'm talking about the Scottish who make whiskey with with the smoked peat. It is crucial to life in Scotland to burn the peat to make the whiskey. And also, Enzo, we are kind of plot making. Over the course of this week, we have started to write aspects of our fantasy novel in the workshop. Tonight, I cast a bunch of beans onto a blank piece of paper, and we have been talking about map making. We've been talking about natural phenomena, climate, and geology, geography, etc. We were enhancing our coastline with rice, randomized, just dropping rice on here. We're casting beans and dice for different locations. We're talking about how water has worked, how natural forces have worked, and as I was doing some planning for today, thinking about things, how you can take a familiar natural force and change one thing about it, and it becomes a supernatural inspiration for the world. Tons of useful ideas on Atlas Obscura's site. Manchita apparently confirms that the Scots need peat to live. It is essential to function to make whiskey. Nice. I'm currently trying to set up a world of my own for a potential one-shot. Enzo, if we can help you do so, you are in a workshop here in the Hero Zone, which itself is a friendly local game store. We are here to communicate, chat, help, and share ideas. Coffee Cat says, coal is a thing in Rebirth, but haven't made any reference to oil. But there is an arcane source called Residuum, but I haven't really determined where it's sourced from. And hey, if the players haven't pushed it too hard, you still have time to think about it. That being said, Raven, don't force Coffee to make snap decisions. First time doing this, and I'm trying to do an alien isolation type thing. It's my first time making a plot and DMing. Enzo, we would be happy to help you. Now, are you running this through Alien RPG? Because there is actually an Alien RPG system. Otherwise, you can simulate the similar things through D&D 5e if that's where you have a lot more familiarity. Oh yeah, so hey, look into it. You can get a starter set, very reasonable. It has dice, it has a starter story and everything. And already the concept of Alien is baked into Alien RPG, Enzo. Star Wars 5e? So I'm sure you could produce something similar as well with that system. Ultimately, a story is a story. If you're telling a story, the dice you roll don't matter as much because you're there for the tale. You're there for the drama, you're there for the intrigue, you're there for the shocks, and for the horror, if you want to present that as part of things. GMV, don't clutch your pearls too hard. You might dust one to cast Identify. But yes, there are aliens in Alien RPG. So if there's something that you have that unique... Oh, the Bermuda Triangle was brought up earlier in chat. We have a sailor who is the villain of the story and is absolutely hell-bent on ridding the world of fae and fiends. Strange things are rumored to happen in the Bermuda Triangle. Why not, in a strange world, play a little bit into that concept? Now, if you have too much stuff, you might go overboard, because then that's a lot for your audience to track. They have to go, okay, so there's a water sphere, there's a Bermuda Triangle. Boy, whoever wrote this is just kind of going overboard, right? They're being a try-hard, or they're trying to flex that they know all this weird random stuff of the world. But they're just telling me about this stuff, they're not showing me. Aha! Praise the sun. Show, don't tell. Because once you start telling people things, the interest dwindles. This is in part why marketing is important. It is, in my opinion, part of the reason why so much that has been offered to pop culture has failed or been rejected. Because it is telling, not showing. And if you want your story, in my opinion, to be stronger, show, don't tell. Let your reader go on the journey with your hero, against the villain, or into the world, or along with friends. There's 50 prepositions. I can use a great many of them, I promise. The story is about the journey. I don't know why the giveaway pool is there. I didn't touch it. So something, I don't know, something reverted or whatever. But it says 2. So in the little menu, I don't know why it's not displaying 2, but it's showing 2 here. Let's go 22. Yep. It'll do 22. Let me put it back to 2. Yeah, weird. I don't know. I didn't touch it. I think it did this once before. Spasmanaz says, previous session, we won the war we've been fighting in the eastern country for about 30 sessions. During the wind-down period, 2 of us got magically abducted by the vampire BBEG of our next arc, and bore witness to them dropping a meteor on a capital city in the west. 1 got bit by the vampire before being sent back to our group in the east. After getting teleported back, the 2 told the rest of the party of what happened, and, after a bit of character drama, split up for a bit. More in a bit. Oh, so Spaz is live in the field from the warfront. Reputable journal Spasmanaz giving us the play-by-play. What's that? Bitten? Sent back? But wait, there's more. Spasmanaz. Tippy typing. Stay tuned, heroes. Oh, and chat's not show. What the heck? What in tarnation? Huh. Why did it... Oh, well, there we go. GMV. Apparently GMV fixed it. Who's in charge around here? So as soon as you lodge a complaint against the manager, it starts working again. You think Twitch is throwing a fit tonight, Camp? Also, yo, Insomnia Night RPG coming in with a raid as well. Insomnia Night, are you able to tell us what was going on in your D and or D game? Was it a more dungeon-based game or a more dragon-based game this time? Well, hey, GMV, I'm just glad it's working. Thank you for the percussive maintenance. just a little GMV. Insomnia Knight says, I got a lemon meringue pie in the face for reaching a sub goal. Was that clipped? Oh, you're playing Dungeon of the Mad Mage. I hope someone clipped the lemon meringue pie, Insomnia. Oh, good. Oh, Nate, you have it? Ah. Good. Good. And that moment will last now forever. Well, congrats on reaching your sub goal, Insomnia. Oh, speaking of percussive maintenance, so no, that Insomnia. If you gotta have your cooldown, your aftercare or whatever after your session, I totally get it. I totally get it. Speaking of things like percussive maintenance, like again, go with things that you've seen. Go with things that you might be familiar with in your corner of the world. What if in this area? Right, we said that this was a desert area over here, but there needs to be some sort of expansion. There's some sort of maybe a race for territory or resources or something along those lines. If you have an arid place that might be filled with loose earth, shifting sands, or the like, how do you go about trying to tame the wild desert? Well, you saw me do some stuff with this tray and trying to sort the loose rice or beans. You give it a shake or you tamp it down, right? There could be, either through magic or through mechanical means. Again, depending. Do you want all of your world to be modern? Do you want it to be Renaissance era, so guns exist alongside full plate armor, like black powder weapons? Do you want it to be Wild West, 17, 1800s? Do you want it to be medieval, so that guns don't exist and certain armors? I mean, we can nitpick about this and that. You get what I'm saying. Well, what if someone, whether or not the dwarves, in fact, do this? If we just talked about having water dwarves, who could be a people of the earth? You know who I find to be very earthy people? Sheep. Because sheep eat grass. Sheep, enhance the earth with what happens after eating grass. Other animals along those lines. Of course, I'm somewhat pandering to Fluffy Sheep if he's still hanging out in chat. So consider this. Instead of being people of fiery, infernal lineage, what if the tieflings of this setting are actually descended from pastoral animals? Tieflings have rectangular pupils. They have horns. Tieflings also can have hooves. Tieflings have some wild hair. Well, it's got to pass through them, Freestyle. And then, they help the grass grow with the grass that they just ate. And so in this case, what if we actually have sheeplings? What if we have the tieflings of this world? The oddball, people look at them, still maybe an outcast of society, familiar tropes to the tieflings. But what if instead they're actually more of a pastoral people, and they want to go through in the arid places and reclaim it or civilize it? And, they're used to butting heads because they butt heads with each other. But also, boom, boom, boom. That's how you get silt and sand to settle down and to compact it. And so what if the sheeplings, in order to try and, rejuvenate or renovate the desert, actually have big pounding machines or magic, big squishing hands that just go and constantly pound, drive down, compress. And now, in a sense, we have terraforming sheeplings. Oh, all right. The horns would be functional rather than merely decorative. And hey, instead of so for Hellish Rebuke, if you want to play into their wool or the Pokemon with with electricity built up, they could have a Hellish Rebuke that's a Sheepish Rebuke, and it's electricity, or it's force damage, or just magical bludgeoning if you don't want to call it force, or something along those lines. By the way, I missed a big part here. Yes, Spaz, I'm sorry. I got on my soapbox. This session, the two groups took different paths to the western city. They got there at different times, but we all got to bear witness to the aftermath of the attack. No one else but our party seemed to know the truth of the meteor. After having a nice reunion with an old party member who left a while ago, the group came up with a path to a possible plan on how to approach our new foe. Our old friend couldn't come with us, but we set off to an ancient forest to meet a vampire hunter ally. The old friend was the one who was bitten? Is the old friend then in danger of turning into a vampire? Is that why the friend had to be left behind? GMV says sheeplings are a bad idea. Yeah, hey, Freestyle, they could, in fact, they could even then have their own herds, right? They could do what we do in Minecraft, and we dye the wool. Something along those lines. Or the different types of sheeplings if they don't just have natural hair color, then they'll dye it, or something along those lines. But functionally, a tiefling is a tiefling is a tiefling. We're just cosmetically changing them into sheeplings. And so we have aquatic dwarves. We have tieflings that are actually probably more on the industrial side to bring a pastoral environment over here. Great weavers. Can you imagine the awesome hairstyles that you could give a sheepling character? Well, not quite tiefling, but sheepling, rad. Remember, in our world, push-up glasses on nose. So how else, given the things that are happening here, how else can we adapt our world with familiar concepts and change one aspect about them, so the reader only has to remember the one aspect, but that one aspect touches everything that is normally known and modifies it. Spasmanaz continues, our old party member left long before all this happened. The bit member is still in the group, and only they and the other who was abducted know about it. The rest of the party has no idea. As far as the danger of becoming a vampire, we'll see. Nothing has happened to them as of yet, but it may cause problems in the future. Dun dun dun! That's some fun tension building in the party then. When you as players know, but the character hasn't revealed it. Because it could be nothing, right? Everyone in the zombie movie goes, no, I wasn't bit. And then later, they're like, and then they fight it, or they're like, oh, put hydrogen peroxide on it, and, that doesn't work. So we have these very interesting takes on what is familiar. We're familiar with the water cycle. And for the most part, for 98% of the world, the water cycle works. For that 2%, it stands out as a landmark on the horizon, something interesting to write about, to explore, or even to pass by as a bit of scenery that we can always come back to. But we don't need to be in a rush for everything. Remember, show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. Speaking of aquatic people, looking forward to seeing the ocean trip in Wakanda Forever. Or the ocean tribe in Wakanda Forever, says Freestyle. I guess it's not spoilers because it's in the trailer, right? I have seen and heard things about that. Which, if anyone is watching this workshop in the future, I believe this is the opening weekend for the movie. But if not, it's next weekend. So I guess time will tell what will happen. So I hope this is encouraging, and ultimately, especially if you were here in the first part, we started with a blank piece of paper and we threw a bunch of beans on it. We got this really cool outline. We refined the coast with rice. We threw some beans down to determine our mountains. We talked about how water flows. Oh, how land rises. I'm sorry. This was one other thing that I wanted to bring up as well. The land generally is formed either through volcanic activity or through tectonic activity. And we had mentioned briefly about tectonic plates. We didn't really make one or, make the substrata. If any of you out there are artists, you're probably familiar with making layers. If you have an art program that lets you do it and you have the knowledge, you can make the same map over several layers and peel them back. So you can see what's happening on a tectonic level, on the actual surface of the crust level. You could make a wind pattern and weather pattern filter or a layer for your world to see and be reminded of things that go on there as well. And so, we talked about the direction of the wind as we rolled randomly. It's blowing in from the west to the east. And that'll give us our weather patterns, our climate. That'll give us our water. Then we could do funky stuff with the water. Now, if we want a mountain range here, something caused this mountain range. And this could end up being where tectonic plates... Well, generally, you would get something like the Mariana Trench where two plates collide. Right? Plates come in like this, and then they buckle. And then they start going like this. And where the level was where my knuckles were, now it's a very deep trench. Plates can also collide and push up against each other. Or we can, I think it's called subduction, where one plate goes down and the other goes up. And you don't get quite as dramatic a mountain range. Because if I recall, this is how the Himalayas were formed. Was India effectively broke off from Africa and smashed into Eurasia. But then you would get I think the Rocky Mountains are subduction, where one plate is going underneath and pushing the other up. So think about that. When you have the collision, do they both go up, both go down, or does one go up and one go down? Or sometimes the volcano is just liquid hot magma pushing up through the crust, and it's a hole punch. It doesn't need anything except a weak spot on a tectonic plate for the mantle to poke through. It's almost like an earth hernia, right? Now, there's some interesting things that you can do as well, and I can give an example here, where you have your magma chamber, bloop bloop, down in the mantle, and it just it erupts. You get a nice volcano. Maybe it forms an island, or it just forms a tall mountain or series of mountains, because usually it's not quite squeezing a planet pimple. It's not usually like a neat, okay, it's a one and done out in the pour. You probably are going to get several, or one big volcano that has several vents for the magma to spew out and become lava. Now, what's interesting is if this is baked into the plate here, then as the rest of the plate moves, the volcano will just move along, because then it's already floating on the mantle. There's already magma beneath there that'll just vent up through the magma chamber. However, you can get something fun where if the plate moves over the chamber, you are actually going to get you're going to get a volcano here, and then let's say that the plate is moving in this direction, okay? In the direction of this arrow up here. You're going to get a series of volcanoes because the chamber is stationary. It's just the surface that's moving. And so you'll get a mountain range that's really the same volcano as the plate has passed over it. So the volcano is the same. The volcano didn't just poke up and is going to move with the plate. Instead, it's here, and the plate moves over, meaning you get a volcano here, plate moves, you get a volcano here, plate moves, you get a volcano here, plate moves, you get a volcano here, and now you have 4 volcanoes in the drift. Yeah, that is Hawaii, Kragar. If I'm remembering correctly. Now, I may have a master's degree, but I do not have it in earth science. I'm presenting the things that I have come to know and study myself, both through undergrad and just through my own personal DM research. So correct me if I'm mistaken, but yes. And there's a name for that phenomena that I forget offhand, but that phenomena does exist. So think about that. Do you want your volcano to travel with your plate, or do you want the plate to travel over the volcano? And what if this is the current hotspot of a long chain of igneous rock? And that's why we can have, as the beans fell, it writes itself. We had a pretty straight line as the beans fell in regards to having a mountain range here. And not that that's unnatural, but it certainly stands out because it doesn't have the wibbly-wobbly crunch of tectonic plates very neatly colliding. Though, that might explain, especially because it fell over our randomly rolled volcano area, that might explain that there's actually a drift where this has been the hot spot the whole time, and the land has just been moving over it. So the land would have to be actually moving down this way, because this keeps pushing up the earth, and then the earth drifts away. Hopefully this is making sense for you all. I have done all these things, says Coffee Cat. What map making program do I use again? Kragar, I used a piece of paper and beans. And rice. This is almost turning into a Rocky Horror Picture Show. And a pen. Now, if I'm broadcasting from home base, I use MS Paint. I have Wonder Draft, and Wonder Draft does beautiful work. Before we refine our maps and our stories further, we need a solid concept. And especially with me wanting to present concepts to you all to be as universal as possible, as accessible as possible, and as inexpensive. Will I recommend Wonder Draft to you all? Yes. Also, hashtag not sponsored. Wonder Draft is wonderful map making software. However, I am willing to bet above that, and above that software program, you probably have or can more easily get beans or rice and a piece of paper at home. And so if you can make your maps with this or Paint, which is just the default art program with Windows, there's probably an equivalent for Apple. If you can make a readable map there, you can make a readable map in Wonderdraft or Incarnate, or a lot of other softwares can do this. But if you start with the concepts, you can add details later. Don't get lost in the details. As cool as it is, as much as we want to go, oh yeah, and this and that and the other thing, and 3 things about this mountain that make it really cool. Okay, I mean, make notes about it, but don't get lost in it, because that mountain is a part of a lot of other things. Who lives in, under, or around the mountain? Are there glaciers on this mountain? Is it volcanic? What kind of minerals might be dug up from under it or wash out from the runoff from the mountain? Does this mountain affect the ecosystem around it in some particular way? Understand broader concepts, because then you can make the detailed calls. Once you have something functioning at a basic level, then add more onto it. With something like Wonderdraft, you can make minute details and notes, and you can customize the colors of everything, etc., etc. Instead of having you hem and haw for half an hour over, do I use more of a yellow for the desert? Or maybe it's more of a pastel lime, because it's not completely... You know what? Actually, I'll make this a sand, not yellow. I have a sand color. I want this to be sand. We'll go into yellow, and we'll do sort of a pastel, a faded green to show it's more arid plains. Oh, except, you know what? There's a pine forest right... We've built nothing. We've just hemmed and hawed, and we have wasted our time. Not that there wasn't creativity, but it didn't go anywhere. Instead, if we just know this is arid, okay, cool, we'll come back there, but we need to understand what happens next to arid place. And why is this arid? Because of mountains. Okay, well, if there's mountains here and this is arid, where do the rivers go? And we can worry about the color of the rivers later. Maybe 10 rivers come off of this mountain range, and we draw those. And then afterwards we go, wouldn't it be cool if for some reason there was a heavy iron deposit right here? And so the water that comes out of this part of the mountain is always rust colored. It's almost like a bloody, like a scab, like brown-red color. And then the people call it a particular name. They call it the Blood River. Or, then, of course, in the Blood River live the blood trout. And then there's the blood people that eat the blood trout that live in the Blood River. And the Blood River is called the Blood River because it has iron in it from the mountain in that particular part. And we've just... But we couldn't have done that without getting the 10 rivers and then doing the cool thing. The specific thing that just spawned 5 other holistic parts of our world. Right? Hopefully. If I'm whacked out of my gourd, please tell me otherwise. What I'm espousing may not work for everyone, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is the only way to make a map and the only way to create a setting for your story. Whether it's a novel, a video game, a fanfic, a webcomic, a novel, or whatever, if I miss something, a movie. This is not the only way to do it. This is simply the way that I can reliably demonstrate it with consistent results that is the most approachable to the most amount of people. And so if I'm capturing as much attention and, at least hopefully nodding heads with you all out there at home, on Twitch currently, or hi YouTube in the future, everyone say hi YouTube, then we might be onto something. And then you, again, just like the process, set the basic foundation and then customize it. Well, that's what we've done, right? Because if you understand the basic technique, you can then customize it for your own needs. Where you need to have sheeplings. Or I'm sorry, that was a takeoff of the eatlins in the Chroma Company campaign. Kind of the same thing. There we go. Fluffy sheep. Brief research indicates the Rockies are a subduction mountain range. Okay, so it's not just the Appalachians. Appalachian and Rockies are subduction. Okay. Here's the church. Here's the steeple. Open the fault, and there go the people. Ah! I do all this in Photoshop and draw it all, says Coffee. I think Rockies are more like the Himalayas, but the Cascades and Sierra Nevadas are subduction. I step away for a sec. Maddie's doing... Yep, we're doing that. Brief research... Okay, that was that. Hawaii... What would you recommend for a dice system? D20 or D6 for rolls with D100 for skill checks? Enzo, don't make it any more complicated than you have to. You are not compelled to use any particular dice outside of what is going to be mathematically easy for you to follow along or to set a particular tone or escalation of difficulty. Don't get caught up in all the different dice types. Because a D20 might as well be a D100. It goes in units of 5. A Rocky Mountain horror picture show. Well, and you know how you can tell? The plain states, like especially up by the Rocky Mountains, used to be a shallow sea. But despite that having been receded, you could tell that the sea was there because all the people who live out that way in Colorado and everywhere, they still eat Rocky Mountain oysters. So somewhere, a part of this sea still exists, and these people just, they collect the oysters and they still eat them. Ibis Paint's a great app to draw on, says Rip Artist. Let's see. Lots of adventures going on that I missed. Insomnia Night. Well, I'm glad you're here now. Craig R says, hi, YouTube. Congrats on the goal. Absolutely, Insomnia Night. Hey, Free Range. Good to see you. Lamau, I'm still on my adventure to find a pearl in the Rocky Mountain oyster. Well, keep at it, my friend, and let me know when you do. They're not as briny as one would expect. Someone who has had a Rocky Mountain oyster, okay? But at least you can tell that the people who live there honor the fact that there used to be an inland sea. Which, by the way, that can play into all this other stuff you do. Use what you know. Use where you live. Use the things you pick up. And even if you're a layman in terms of knowledge about this stuff, if you so much as heard about it, that's enough. Because then you can take it in your own direction with how you think it works or what it does. Miller says, excuse me, Maddie, I'm in that region, and nope. Insomnia Night, you're looking mighty sensuous. Since you was up, can you get me a soda? Actually, I think I'll get myself a soda. It's right over here. And I'm glad you're amused, Coffee Cat.